Ladies and gentlemen, I think I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome to the 5th meeting of the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. A reminder to all members, the proceedings tonight are televised, and it is my pleasure to welcome Minister Bryson. Minister Bryson, I understand you have an opening statement, and perhaps you could also introduce some of the officials with you, and you may commence whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm delighted to be here with you tonight and with members of the committee. We're going to be focusing tonight on Supplementary Estimates C. I look forward to the discussion. The mandate of this committee studies the effectiveness and proper functioning of government operations, studies the estimates process, as well as the expenditure plans of central departments and agencies. So for this committee, Treasury Board is really quite central to the work of this committee. Your work is very central to Treasury Board, so I'm looking forward to having a good working relationship with members of this committee, and I'm delighted to be here tonight with Joyce Murray, our Parliamentary Secretary, Bill Matthews, the Controller General of Canada, Brian Pagan, the Assistant Secretary of Expenditure Management at TBS, and Renee Lafontaine, the Assistant Secretary, Corporate Services and Chief Financial Officer. After my remarks, we'd be happy to take any questions you may have. Permettez-moi de commencer en vous parlant.
I would like to first talk briefly about the overall estimates process. And as you know, each year the government prepares estimates to request Parliament's authority to spend public funds. The slide on page 3 So page 3 shows this process.
Each of your officers were provided with a deck which has that information. The main estimates and the supplementary estimates A, B, and C provide information on the planned spending for each department and agency. The budget principal.
Main estimates must be tabled in the House of Commons no later than March 1st. The supplementary estimates present information to Parliament on spending that was either not sufficiently developed in time for inclusion in the main estimates or has since been refined to account for new developments in programs or services.
To the estimates process in order to highlight how we believe it could be improved. I'd like to turn now to government-wide supplementary estimate C. I want to put these estimates into context by going back to the 2015-2016 supplementary estimates B, which I presented to Committee of the Whole in December. Given the timing of the election in October of last year, the fall parliamentary session opened much later than usual, and most parliamentary committees had not yet been struck. Donc, par respect pour le nouveau Parlement,
So out of respect for the newly formed Parliament, the fall supplementary estimates B only included the most urgent items that could not be temporarily cash managed within existing authorities. As a result, the supplementary estimates C, which were tabled on February 19th, are higher than what we would normally see.
Government's request for Parliament to approve $2.8 billion in voted appropriations for 58 organizations. These funds are needed to continue government programs and initiatives. Page 4 of the deck highlights major items over $100 million, and they include $435 million to restore financial health to the Service Income Security Insurance Plan, SISIP, which provides long-term disability benefits to Canadian Forces members. 216 millions de dollars pour le soutien militaire du Canada à l'Ukraine.
$216 million related to military support for Canada's assistance to Ukraine and operations against the so-called Islamic State in Iraq and Syria.
To write off debts owed to the Crown for unrecoverable Canada student loans, $168 million for the Green Climate Fund, $147 million for the resettlement of Syrian refugees, $121 million for Global Affairs Canada to cover foreign exchange adjustments, and also some contributions to international organizations. $116 million for the construction of 3 offshore fisheries science vessels for the Canadian Coast Guard. With respect to my own Treasury Board supplementary estimates, the Department is seeking Parliament's authority for an additional $511.9 million. Now, that includes the $435 million for disability benefits for Canadian Forces members, which I referenced earlier, CISIP. It also includes $34 million to establish a contingency to cover any increase in expenditures under the Public Service Health Care Plan, and $42.7 million in Vote 1 for program expenditures, which mostly come from other government departments to support Treasury Board-led government-wide back office transformation. This amount is actually offset by funding transferred from TBS to Shared Services Canada for IT infrastructure costs related to workplace renewal. Finalement, permettez-moi de dire quelques mots sur la transparence.
Finally, let me say a few words about transparency. Mr. Chair, we are firmly committed to providing parliamentarians with the information they need to hold the government to account and to examine expenditures. Right now, the system doesn't help us reach this goal because of timing issues determined in part by House of Commons standing orders. The budget items for a given year are not reflected in the main estimates for the same year.
The current system is not transparent. The current system is, in my view, not functional or effective if the objective is that parliamentarians can hold government, I don't care what government, this government, future governments, to account. We aim to change that, and we look forward to working with you as part of this process. The current system results in Parliament being asked to approve departmental spending plans without complete information on what the departments are actually planning to spend. And, Mr. Chair, we understand that when it comes to the process of approving and reporting on government spending, this misalignment of the budget and estimates processes and the public accounts is an ongoing source of confusion for Parliament, media, and Canadians. Some governments, in particular, and we may hear more later this evening, like the Australian government, have reformed their estimates and budget processes in a way that is more rational and effective if the objective is that Parliament is given the information it needs to do its job. These are problems that make it much more difficult for the Parliament of Canada, all members of Parliament, regardless of party, to scrutinize government spending. Simply sequencing the main estimates so that they're presented to Parliament after the budget rather than before is, I believe, an important first step to better providing more complete and useful information to Parliament. I want to work closely with parliamentarians and other key stakeholders and experts to achieve greater transparency. Would welcome an opportunity to engage this committee. We had, in fact, a few weeks ago, we had a session for parliamentarians of all parties. MPs and senators from all parties were there to discuss potential opportunities to reform the budget and estimates process. There was over 70 parliamentarians participated in that. My officials are currently preparing a discussion paper on the subject of estimates alignment, which we'll be able to share with this committee. And I'd welcome the opportunity to return in the future to have a more fulsome discussion on that. I know committees set your own agendas, but this would be one that we would really appreciate your input in terms of looking at models that work better than the one we have here now, and ways we can improve accountability. We've taken some concrete steps to improve transparency already in these supplementary estimates by reporting on government lapses. I'll draw your attention to page 6 of the presentation. For the first time, there's actually now an online annex. You can go to the Treasury Board website to the supplementary estimates. There's an online annex to the supplementary estimates which provides Parliament with an early indication of the lapses expected for this fiscal year. And we can discuss this further. What time do I?
Right at the 10-minute mark now,
Okay,
Minister.
why don't we can come back to that. I know you want to talk about frozen allotments. I know that's an exciting lapses, and frozen allotments is something that gets all of us really excited. But it is an important issue, and we can return to that. I will tell you that it was a significant step to actually make public online this annex which lists the frozen allotments. This is a significant step forward, which was recognized by the Parliamentary Budget Officer, who actually said that the publication of these frozen allotments a full 10 months prior to the Public Accounts of Canada represents an important increase in fiscal transparency, ensuring that parliamentarians are on less unequal footing with the government. To paraphrase, it puts you on more equal footing to eliminate a double negative. But we appreciate the support of the Parliamentary Budget Office in this, and as we move forward, we intend on taking further steps to provide the expense or the spending of government more details and more useful information in a more useful format to parliamentarians as we move forward. On that note, I'll conclude my remarks, and I look forward to our discussion this evening, Mr. Chair and members of this committee.
Thank you, Minister. And just a quick comment. I appreciate, and I think all members appreciate your comments of your willingness to work with this committee, particularly in, I think, a shared concern to reform the budgetary and estimates process. And I think you will find, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Minister, as I have, that the members of this committee are not only extremely bright and well informed, that they're also extremely engaged. So I believe you will have a great time working with this committee, and I'm sure that you will find during questions that their level of knowledge and engagement will be apparent, which is a nice segue into the first round of questions, which will be a 7-minute round, and we'll start with Madame Hortense.
Thank you, Minister Bryson, for being here. And I was looking at your mandate letter, and you have a huge mandate to fulfill. You got 11 priorities. And I know that your goal is to lead the management agenda of the government. And one of the things you've talked about is transparency and accountability. And I appreciate the fact that you're trying to align both the estimate and the budget process. But I was looking at this Annex B, which talks about cash versus accrual accounting. I think it confuses the living daylights when your public accounts are in cash basis and something else is an accrual basis. So while your department is looking at things around making the cycles similar, could we please look at accrual accounting, because these are the international financial standards, and everybody reads financial statements. Well, accountants read financial statements that way, and it's easy to explain. But you come here seeking, the Treasury Board is requesting $43 million plus for the back office transformation initiative. And my question would be that along the lines of your desire to make operations more moving towards information technology, so data is available, it's open, etc. What are some of the challenges that Treasury Board will face or has faced as it moves towards that back office transformation? And how can we avoid the problems that shared services is facing, for example, where the RFP process is not very transparent sometimes, or it's not very well done? And I know that you have to work with, in your mandate, you have to establish new performance standards with ministers like public service and procurement. The minister will be coming tomorrow. So if you could give me some idea of how you're moving towards it, what are some of the challenges we face, and how going forward we can make the process more accountable.
Thank you very much, Yasmin, Ms. Ratanzi. And you're a chartered accountant as well, so you have the question, first of all, on cash versus accrual accounting is an important one. I mentioned earlier this evening the Australian example of a country that, in my opinion, has done a good job of reforming their budget and estimates process and in terms of rendering it more transparent and accountable to Parliament. One of the things they did was move to the similar systems where accrual accounting, across the board. Now there were problems with that, and they ran into issues, and ultimately they reversed some of that. And if I may ask Brian to speak to some of the problems they ran into. But as a committee, and in our work as we look at options together, I'm open to the Australian model, and that is an example of something that I haven't said we won't do that, but it is something that they ran into issues around that. So I may ask Brian to speak to some of the challenges they had with the Australian models. Would that be fine, Mr. Chair? Yeah. And then I'll answer the second question.
Great. Well, thank you for the question. We have a number of issues that we would like to address with parliamentarians in terms of better alignment of the budget, the estimates, and the public accounts documents. Currently, we can say that the documents are aligned in the sense that the budget and Volume 1 of the public accounts are on an accrual basis, and the estimates and Volume 2 of the public accounts are on a cash basis. When we look at experience in other jurisdictions, we believe that there is some merit or benefit in that, but we understand that there are different views, and we'd be happy to work with parliamentarians to better understand those. As the Minister said, we have looked at Australia, and it was a significant problem in the sense that unexpended accrual envelopes grew, and considerable lapses, considerable sums of money were accumulated without being spent for the purpose for which they were intended, and that in itself is obviously a problem. In the Minister's reference to the estimates after the budget, we believe that if we can just get that right, that very simple thing right, a whole bunch of other things with respect to these documents will be more coherent and more transparent, and therefore better able to have those discussions. But we'll be returning to the committee to talk about that.
Sure. Thank you. And on the others, the whole issue of back office transformation, enterprise-wide solutions are difficult whether you're in a big company with a lot of divisions or in a government. The challenges of shared services that occurred under the previous government are not unique, and so I'm not being partisan. These are difficult files. Treasury Board, because we're a central agency that works across departments and agencies, as part of our mandate, we work to establish good governance around these things, but it is not easy. When you're trying to implement and procure enterprise-wide, particularly IT solutions, all government procurement is murky. Government IT solutions are murkier. I'd say defense procurement is probably the toughest file. But in terms of this, it's always a challenge. It's one that we are engaged in very actively, because modernizing back office support and transforming the back office and IT solutions is not an option. It's something we have to do as a government to modernize and improve the services we provide to Canadians and the value we provide those services for taxpayers. So we have to do this. But it is a challenge the previous government faced. It's a challenge every government faces in terms of managing this. But Treasury Board is at the center of that, and we take it very seriously. But it does take investments.
So I have a question. Sorry.
So very, very brief question.
Just quickly, you need to institute proper budgeting, because accrual account is based on, you asked us you made a statement that we are asking you to approve departmental estimates without you knowing what the departments are doing. So I think it is important that the departments budget properly, and then the accrual accounting would help, and Sheila Fraser would be an excellent asset.
I agree with everything you just said, Ms. Ratanzi.
A nice way to finish off the
that,
first
no,
round.
it is something we should look at. And again, as we're reforming the budget and estimates process, I don't want perfection to be the enemy of the good. If we can identify some concrete steps we can take to make things better, we can do a whole, a full portfolio of changes in the future. But I want to make some concrete changes to get things better before the next budget year.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Blaney, 7 minutes, please.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Minister, to the committee and to your officials as well, and your parliamentary secretary. I'm very pleased to see you here and very glad to hear that you want to work cooperatively with us. You can certainly count on our role as a constructive opposition. With respect to the changes, you'll have to convince us of the need for those changes, and I will be coming to my question. You're talking about whether we have the budget update on the government spending for 2015. It's clear that there was a $1.9 billion surplus for 2014-2015. But if I look at the new mandate, now I'm of course speaking through the chair here, but if I refer to your election platform, you say that there will be a short-term deficit of less than $10 billion so that we can invest in infrastructure and help the middle class in Canada. Now, you said that you would be back to a surplus or a balanced budget in 2019, but when I look at the headlines,
Exceed $52 billion over 2 years if Liberals keep their promises. Liberal deficits could total $90 billion after 4 years, and that's a National Bank study. Mr. Minister, you are the guardian of the taxpayer. You're the one who say no, and you're also the one who signed the check. Comme on dit en bon français, on voudrait pas que vous pogniez une tendinite.
As we say in French, well, we don't want you to get tennis elbow when you have to sign all of these checks, all the money going out. It's the taxpayers that are going to have to pay for all this. Now, you've got a new mandate. You have an important role to play here. Are you prepared to keep the commitments that you made in your election platform? As you know, the opposition parties want to see a balanced budget. So I would like your reaction to that, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Blaney. I appreciate your question, and I'm very pleased to see you there with our election platform in hand. It's an extraordinary document. We don't agree on the point that you've raised, but we have inherited a deficit from the previous government, and it is clear as well that we have inherited a situation which forces us to promote economic growth. If we had an economy where, well, in fact, we have anemic growth right now, and so it's a priority for us to invest in a major way in infrastructure. We need to renew our infrastructure across Canada, and we need to invest in the middle class. We need to make strategic investments to create jobs, and economic growth is a priority for our government. And we will do these things. It will be clear in our budget because this is what we are going to be focusing on in the budget. It is important to acknowledge that the former government, your government, increased our national debt by $150 billion and with the creation of economic growth. Now we're going to make different decisions. We will be strategically targeting economic growth. Thank you, Minister. Yes, we did invest to stimulate economic growth, but how can you say, given the information here from the finance department that shows that there was a $1.9 billion surplus, and you made a commitment to have slight deficits. Can you make a commitment here as the Treasury Board President that this will be the case? Because taxpayers are concerned, people in my riding, people know that sustainable development doesn't mean foisting an unsustainable system on them. We are going to see a bigger deficit, bigger debt, and that doesn't mean sustainable development. There's going to be a bottleneck. You've got this platform. 49% of the Canadian 41% of people voted for you, but not necessarily for these deficits. And you see the headlines. You are on a dangerous path. You are the president of the Treasury Board, and will you take your responsibilities seriously and make sure that the Liberal Party's commitments are kept? Those commitments were made during the election campaign. We left a $1.9 billion surplus. I can provide you with the document. It's available online from the Department of Finance.
A lengthy preamble like that, but
No,
succinct an answer as you could, please.
je l'aime beaucoup, bon gars. Et M. Blaney et moi,
Well, we work together, we work out in the gym together sometimes, and this is why
Mr. Blaney and I were tough guys. Monsieur le Président, c'est très important.
Mr. Chairman, it is very important to acknowledge that experts like David Dodge, Kevin Lynch, Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary in the United States. So these people that I've mentioned and others agree with our approach of making investments now, particularly at a time when economic growth is weak.
We're investing strategically. We will invest strategically. You'll see that in the budget, and we will do so in a disciplined way. We will grow the economy. We will invest in the middle class. We've committed to that. We believe in that, and the OECD and some of the top economic thinkers in the world agree with us. But I very much welcome Mr. Blaney's questions today, and look forward to further conversations on this.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Weir, 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've had some broad questions about the overall fiscal framework. I'd like to focus on a couple of specific areas. As the Treasury Board is undoubtedly aware, the global transportation hub near Regina is mired in a controversial land deal that saw this Crown Corporation pay more than twice what the land was worth to sellers with connections to the governing Sask Party. There have been calls for an RCMP investigation. In Monday's adjournment debate, the Parliamentary Secretary for Transport confirmed that her department had provided $27 million to the Global Transportation Hub, but did not seem particularly concerned about how the money was spent. Today's Globe and Mail reports that the Treasury Board has placed Transport Canada under special oversight. Will that include an investigation to ensure that federal tax dollars were not wasted in a suspicious Sask Party land deal?
Thank you very much, Mr. Weir. And you've actually worked at Treasury Board at one point or another.
That's true.
I think Mr. Blaney actually worked at Public Works, my old department, a long time ago. But in terms of first of all, I want to address broadly the issue around Transport Canada's operating budget on this. We're working closely with Minister Garneau on this, and he will respond to specific transport questions around that. I'm certainly willing to speak with Minister Garneau about that. Treasury Board is engaged across every government department and agency. We work closely, our Controller General, Mr. Matthews particularly, like me, a Dalhousie University graduate with a commerce degree from Dalhousie, just like, so must be a smart fella. But we work closely with departments and agencies with the objective of establishing strong financial governance. And we work including identifying if there are issues, and so we will. Would it be all right if I were to check into that and work with my colleague minister and get back to you?
I would certainly appreciate that. So just to clarify, you'll ask Minister Garneau to look specifically into the Global Transportation Hub, just to make sure that federal funds were not misspent.
I've been around long enough to know when I don't know the answer to a question, I say I don't know the answer to the question. I will talk with Minister Garneau about that, and I commit to you, and we'll get back. The last thing I want to get drawn into is provincial politics in Saskatchewan, so I don't know what the situation is there, but from a federal government's perspective, we'll certainly check into that.
Fair enough. To touch on another issue, yesterday at this committee, the Privy Council office indicated that it will spend about $1 million annually supporting the new advisory board for Senate appointments, and that its recommendations will not be made public. Will other departments or the Senate itself spend additional funds on this process? The Senate remains unelected, unaccountable, and under investigation. Why is the government pouring more money into this unnecessary institution rather than simply following the example of every provincial legislature and abolishing the upper house?
Well, I've checked my mandate letter extensively, and Senate reform's not in it. But Senate reform is something that's important to our government. We have laid out, my colleague Minister Monsef has put forward proposals in conjunction with our House Leader, and this is something we take seriously in terms of strengthening the Senate and improving the appointment process. And that process is underway now. As you know, there's an interim process because of an urgency for appointment of senates in certain provinces. There's a panel of an independent advisory board of eminent Canadians that has been appointed to that, and we are moving forward with Senate reform.
The cost of that board, though, can you confirm that the $1 million a year will be the total federal contribution to that process, or might other departments be spending money on this new regime as well?
Well, ultimately, and I think you're talking about disbursements that occur within the Senate and Parliament. Some of that will be the appointment process is what we're talking about, and to reform any process requires an investment. We believe these are sensible investments aimed at a greater good of a stronger Senate and a process that's more transparent, and ultimately that renders the Senate appointment process more meritorious. I want to be very clear, though, Mr. Weir, and my view is that the Senate of Canada does important work, and that We believe that the Senate can be strengthened, but there's some very important work that occurs in the Senate and at Senate committees, and there are some. This is a difference of opinions, we can have, but I believe that there are important steps we can take without the need of opening up the Constitution as an example, through the appointment process that can further strengthen the Senate. And I think Canadians want to see that.
There is a difference of opinion, but there's also an empirical question about the cost of this new process, and certainly that money could otherwise used to fund good research and important studies for which the Senate is sometimes credited. So there is a question about whether this is the most efficient use of money.
But would you agree if the process we're speaking of rendered the Senate more effective in the appointment process, more transparent, that would be a sensible thing?
Well, if it rendered the process more transparent, but I was disappointed to learn that the recommendations won't be public.
Would that be an objective, though? Is that a laudable objective with which you would agree?
Mr. Weir, you will have another 3-minute round, I believe, towards the end of this. We're at our 7 minutes now.
Thank you.
My problem there is you got to understand, come June 19th, I will have been around here elected not for 19 years, and by that point, 16 and a half of those years were in opposition, so I'm more accustomed to answering or asking questions sometimes, so I apologize to my colleague.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Graham, 7 minutes, please.
Minister, thank you for being here. You have more experience on this particular file than I think any of us wants. But I want to dive into your favorite topic of frozen allotments and uncommitted authorities, which I know you're very much looking forward to doing. When we look at these allotments of $5.1 billion, I'm wondering, the Conservatives tell us they balanced the last budget. I find it very hard to believe. How much money went unspent in that toward the number they claim to have been a surplus?
There's a couple things, David, on this, and I was joking a little bit with Mr. Blaney, but I don't want this to be, I don't want us to get into, I've said on committees that get too partisan. It's not a lot of fun. But on this, the idea, if you take a look at the fiscal monitor, it's a picture in time, 1 month, 1 quarter, what have you, and it's kind of like saying, you check your bank account one day and you have $10,000 in it, but you haven't paid your mortgage, you haven't paid your car payment, you haven't paid, and you think, I must have money in my account, I still have checks left, kind of thing. It's not exactly a broader picture in terms, it doesn't necessarily reflect the overall. In terms of the frozen allotments and that question, I just want to give you some example. These are funds that are approved by Parliament, but the Treasury Board will restrict access to the monies for various reasons. I'll give you just a couple examples. One is, for instance, when there's a commitment to transfer dollars to another department or agency in exchange for a service. Another is the reprofiling to future years. For instance, freezing allotments, funds or freezing allotments sometimes occurs with defense procurement, where we set aside a certain amount of money with the expectation that money will be expended in the future. Again, you can go to the Treasury Board website and you can see $5.1 billion and it laid out in terms of the specific examples. There's $2.8 billion of the frozen amounts that are funds that have been approved for profiling to future years. This includes $630 million in capital and operating funds for major defense projects, like I mentioned, $675 million for claim settlements and other transfers supporting Indigenous peoples. I'll give you one example here that is, I find it falls under Treasury Board, and that's $507 million for maternity and parental benefits and severance. That falls under Treasury Board Central. And it's an important one because Treasury Board, by doing this centrally, it takes that, I don't want to use the term, but that financial cost out of departments and agencies, and Treasury Board manages it. We do that because we believe there is a public good to not having departments and agencies making hiring decisions with limited budgets based on whether or not there's a possibility that somebody may need parental benefits or severance and that sort. So there are some very important and progressive reasons why Treasury Board will manage some of these centrally. We are managing government contingencies this year. Part of this for Treasury Board is $750 million of government contingencies that won't be allocated. Carry forwards from other years for operating capital budgets of $560 million. The rendering of this public earlier in the budget process, as the Parliamentary Budget Officer has said, is a significant step in terms of transparency. It's an important step, but it's just the beginning in terms of transparency and providing better information to parliamentarians and Canadians.
Okay, thank you. A quick question for you. You want to reform the supplement system. I think it's really interesting. Have there been recent reforms, or has it been a fairly constant system for a long time?
Well, goodness, it has been it's been a process that has been on a secular basis over a period of time, I think has become less meaningful. There was a time when the main estimates and the ministers coming before committees to defend their estimates was considered a big deal, and parliamentarians, this was central to the job of parliamentarians. I have to tell you, we were talking about the Senate earlier. Within the Senate, there are senators who actually, I must say, understand this process more thoroughly and who make a point of holding ministers to account on estimates in a very effective way. I think my officials would agree with that. If you want to go to a Senate committee where ministers are appearing on their estimates, this is something that's happened on a secular basis over a longer period of time. It's not purely a partisan thing. A question is how do we fix it? This is something that we take very seriously. I know there's been really good work done by the officials in our department on this. I pointed out earlier the Australian model. I think you were actually, Mr. Graham, you were at the session we did with parliamentarians a few weeks ago.
I arrived very late because I had rural caucus before it.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's right. I should have been. I should go. I'm a proud member of rural caucus as well. But on this, it is a very this process, and I do want to come back to committee specifically to focus on some of the ideas around reforming. There is a deck that we presented to members of Parliament and senators who came to that meeting that night. And if I may, Mr. Chair, we will provide that deck to the committee. We can provide that, although we haven't set a date to come back to this estimates and parliamentary supply process. But I would like to provide that to committee members soon, such that you can start thinking about this, and as we move forward. But I think it's something really important. It's in our wheelhouse at Treasury Board. It's in OGGO's parliamentary committee's wheelhouse as well in terms of making this work better.
Thank you. We're out of time, but just to let you know, Minister, that Treasury Board has already given us that deck you referred to, and it's already been distributed. But
Great stuff.
Thank you for the offer. We'll go to the 5-minute round now and start with Mr. McCauley.
Minister, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate your dedication to open government. I think if you attended yesterday's session, you would have felt like us. It was like an episode of Yes, Minister. We were getting answers, so I appreciate your commitment to transparency. I won't go over the billion-dollar questions like my cohort here, but on veteran affairs, the $81 million to support increased demand for health, rehab, and support services, is that for the reopening of those 9 outlets that have been closed, or how is this money, how is it being deemed or divided up and spent, prioritized, especially across such a large country and a large amount of vets requiring service? Is it based on just solely election promise reopening those 9, or is it based on actual proven need by geographic region?
Thank you, Mr. McCauley. First of all, Veterans Affairs and treatment of our veterans and those who have served Canada so valiantly is something all of us as parliamentarians consider to be an important priority. there is a couple things. One is the nature of military service today, and most recently Afghanistan. Now, in terms of the members of the Canadian Armed Forces who are serving in the mission against ISIS as part of the training as we go forward, and the nature of military service has changed, and in fact, supporting veterans in the context of this changed environment, and for instance, the increased incidence of post-traumatic stress disorder and some of these other related challenges necessitates that governments change the way we treat veterans and update and modernize that, and we take that seriously. The requested funds are to support an increase in the number of disability benefit applications processed, increasing requirements for health services for things like prescription drugs. And I want to stress increased support for mental health services. This is something...
Yeah, I appreciate that. Is this specifically for those 9? Is this specifically for payment for the cost for reopening those 9?
We are...
Or is it for separate services, as you're now saying?
We are reopening the 9 offices. The funding I'm speaking of here is to improve service delivery to veterans, and then I mentioned some of the areas, including improved mental health. That doesn't obviate what we believe to be an important priority, and that is to reopen some of these offices, to reopen these offices. We were told very clearly by veterans that these offices and the physical location of these offices, the capacity to go and to talk with people, was very important to the services we provide.
I appreciate that, and that's excellent. I think it's reflected as well in the extra 435, but that 81 million, is that for the cost of those 9 offices, or is it for extra pharmaceuticals you mentioned, or extra services across the country, or?
Well, part of that actually, increase the number of disability benefit applications processed is a big part of this, as well as the mental health side. There's also 5 years to improve service delivery to veterans and their families over the next 5 years. We're also we're talking about the estimates now and Sub-C. In a couple weeks, we'll have a budget as well, which will have.
And I realize it's a question out of the dark, and if you haven't got the exact details, I mean, that's fine.
In terms of, this is actually, these are actually not related to reopening those.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
But not specific to those reopening of those offices. But we are reopening those offices.
No, that's what I'm asking.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. McCullough.
I'm sure very short of time. I just want to follow up another issue we had yesterday we could not get a clear answer on. There's $1 million asked for shutting down Canada's Economic Action Plan, and we realize it's a controversial issue from the past. But seeking $1 million, I'm trying to figure out what that $1 million is for. My understanding, they're looking for $1 million extra to shut it down. The answer we got was, no, this is money already spent this year before the change of government.
I'm going to have to cut it off now. Perhaps your colleague, Mr. Blaney, in his next round would be able to pursue that line of questioning, and perhaps the minister would be able to respond at that time.
Yeah, up to you, Mr. Chair. I'm prepared if
We'll move on if we can, because I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to question the minister before we have to adjourn. We'll go to another 5-minute round for Monsieur Ayoub.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Minister, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this afternoon to answer our question. Of course, transparency is important, and the new approach is also important, and I'm very proud of the direction we're going. I would like to ask a question specifically about the military insurance program, the CICIP. We're talking about nearly $500 million, 455 million. So I'd like to know what the initial budget was and what the increase is, and what is the main reason for increasing this? Were there mistaken calculations at the beginning so that we had to make this big increase? Or is this something that had been slapped together and then you realized that there was a lot of money missing? So I'd like to know what the process was. How did it happen that almost $500 million had to be added? Thank you, Mr. Abiyoub. I do appreciate your question. In the current economic situation where we have very low interest rates, there is a need to invest in order to increase the value, strengthen our public pensions. I will just try to answer in English, I think, because it's quite technical.
There's a couple factors here. One is the demands on the military pension and disability pension, CISIP and the CISIP disability, have been increasing for a number of reasons. I mentioned earlier to Mr. McCauley's question some of the issues around investing in mental health and supporting mental health as part of that. The other thing is, in a very low interest rate environment that we have now, pension plans have faced some challenges, and we are committed to, first of all, maintaining the prudential strength of our public pension plans, but also maintaining transparency around our pension plans. So this investment reflects that. I've been informed by my officials, Brian, that there's been a 66% increase in benefits over 3 years, resulting from Afghanistan veterans, as an example. So this is something that whatever government was there would be faced with. There's a very real need to maintain the prudential strength of our pension plans during a time when, in the case of CISIP, as an example, that payouts will grow, and we're in a very low interest rate environment. So that this investment reflects that. Bill or Brian or Brent, any?
Juste pour ajouter un fait de plus.
Just add one thing.
The increasing number of claims because of the service in Afghanistan. The third piece is the amount of benefits that are actually being paid out have increased recently because of a settlement related to a lawsuit, the Manouche case, which that's actually driving up the payments of individual claims. And I believe your first question was around what was the starting point of the fund for the current year. So we started the year with about 370 million, I think 368 to be exact. We're adding 435 million, so we're basically more than doubling what's there. But it's those three factors now that you have: interest rates, increasing number of claims, plus the Manouche settlement.
If I may, I've got is there a way to plan those kinds of écart, those kinds of difference ahead, a little bit ahead? Because
the answer to that is that we are seeking. We are actually taking a look at public sector pension plans across the board and Treasury Board, to try to be able to foresee and predict the need for these investments. Rest assured, we will, as we're making these investments, we will do so in a very transparent way, and we will be accountable to Parliament and for them, and to explain them, and to engage parliamentarians in them. But I think we would all agree that in terms of public sector pension plans, we need to, first of all, maintain the prudential strength, but we have to do so in an open and transparent way. We also have to make sure that we are utilizing the best possible pension management approaches in terms of long-term pension security for pension holders, and maximizing return in a responsible way.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Blaney, for 5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Minister, once again, it's really a pleasure to have you here with us tonight. And of course, we have to give you a chance. And I hope you won't say no to this. I would like to know whether there's actually somebody in charge. Will you be helping protect taxpayers against the increase in spending? Now, on page 18 of the estimates, supplementary estimate C, we have a program to make young people aware of the use of marijuana. So a $9.5 million budget here has been allocated for this outreach program to prevent illegal use of marijuana, which we know is quite dangerous. And I also have a question about the shipbuilding program. $116 million is indicated here, so I would like to know why there are additional costs for the program. So I would like to know whether the $1 million for advertising is part of the $9.5 million set aside for the marijuana awareness program.
Thank you very much. From marijuana to shipbuilding, we run the gamut here. But on, first of all, j'aimerais commencer avec la discussion de.
I'd like to start with the marijuana legislation. The approach taken by the Government of Canada over the past period has not really worked. We have not been able to discourage young people from using marijuana, and we have a responsibility to implement an approach
evidence-based, and the evidence is quite clear. Nobody is condoning or supporting or promoting the use of marijuana, Mr. Blaney. What we want is, in fact, a legal framework and laws that actually are more effective. And some countries that have chosen to focus efforts, for instance, on health promotion and prevention and mental health services and addiction services, have actually found that that has been more effective to actually reduce the use of drugs, marijuana being one of them, than simply you know, a criminal justice approach. We can differ on the approach, but I want to be very clear here, Mr. Blaney, that nobody here is advocating or promoting the use of marijuana. Now, you've raised the question of shipbuilding, and I think you may be speaking specifically to the 3 offshore fisheries science vessels, the 116 million. As you know, we are committed to a national shipbuilding program across Canada. This funding of the 3 offshore fisheries science vessels, I've been working most recently with Minister Tutu on this. This is part of replacing the aging fleet. This is important. And what's important as you're managing shipbuilding or any well, this is broadly, although it's fisheries, Coast Guard, it is shipbuilding falls broadly between well, fisheries and defense, but also public works, or now public services and procurement, and procurement and public services rather, and industry. And what we seek to do as a government is to balance public works, or I'm sorry, procurement and public services, my old department. Their job is to an open and transparent process that gets the best value for taxpayers. Industry seeks to maximize industrial regional benefits, IRBs, most recently called ITBs, technology benefits. And then the departments defense or fisheries have their needs in terms of that. Treasury Board overall plays a leadership and coordinative role to work with all departments, across departments and agencies, to have the most efficient procurement processes that address all of those three government objectives: jobs for Canadians, value for tax dollars, and the best possible equipment for our military and for our Coast Guard as examples.
Thank you, Minister. And that's the end of our
just, if I
I'm
could
sorry,
just...
Mr. Blaine, I'm sorry. We're out of time.
Mr. Speaker, to you,
yes.
If I could have a confirmation of this $1 million that is invested, I would appreciate, not a question, but as a follow-up.
Something on it. I'm sorry about that. I'm not being evasive. I'm being long-winded. That's different. But Mr. McCauley's question earlier, that was related to, funds being used to, we're updating the Prime Minister's website, improve communications to Canadians, digital process. The previous government had the previous Prime Minister had the 24/7 thing. Oh,
completely
it is related.
different.
We're not, but we're not canceling the action plan, as it were, Mr. McCauley. The action will still occur, but we're just not going to do as much advertising of it.
Cut out real quick.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much.
Minister, I know that it is 7:30. You've graciously given us an hour. However, normally in our rotation, we end with a 3-minute round that goes to the third party. If you would agree, sir, would you be prepared to sit through another grueling 3-minute question and answer session?
Look, I got to tell you, Mr. Chair, I've been over the various years. I've been in opposition. I've been in. It's like Mae West. She said, I've been rich and I've been poor. Rich is better, but opposition government's a little better. But I have great respect for the work of opposition members, and I think at one point I was in the 5th place party in the House of Commons. So the answer is absolutely yes. That I would.
That's right. And 3 minutes, and please be precise as possible, because 3 minutes is for the question and the answer.
12-member caucus.
I'll pick up on the point about marijuana. While the government figures out its framework to legalize marijuana, will it decriminalize marijuana to at least ensure that people are not receiving criminal records or going to jail for simple possession and use?
That process is currently, and my colleague, Minister Wilson-Raybould, and also Mr. Blair, as Parliamentary Secretary, is working on this, and there is a process. I'm not an expert on that process. We want to get it right. I think having Mr. Blair there, given his law enforcement background, is very helpful. But we want to do the right thing, not based on ideology, but based on evidence. And I'm confident that we will get it right. But I'm not aware of some stopgap measure in the interim.
Mr. Weir, if I just may, a quick interjection, I won't penalize your time for it. But again, the primary function of Minister Bryson to be here is talk about sub-Cs. And I know there's always a tendency to get into the political sphere, but again, if we could concentrate our comments, please, on the reason for the minister's appearance tonight, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So the sub-Cs include a request from the Canada Revenue Agency for additional funding for tax compliance measures, which I support. But given the revelation that the Canada Revenue Agency violated its own guidelines by offering a secret deal to millionaires who had avoided taxes through the Isle of Man, how much can we expect it to collect through these compliance programs?
Mr. Weir, the last government I was part of back in 2004, 2006, at that time made a significant investment in the capacity of Revenue Canada to go after offshore tax havens. And in fact, my understanding is that investment yielded significant financial returns to the government in terms of identifying. We are investing in the capacity for Revenue Canada to ensure that we are able to, the Canadians can have confidence in the tax system. The people will be paying their fair share is something we take very seriously as a government. And I know I've had this discussion with Minister Letellier It's a priority for our finance minister and our minister of revenue. We are, CRA unreported taxes identified by the audit program, just as an example, grew 24% in 3 years to 11.7 billion. The International Large Business Program detected 7.8 billion in unreported tax last year. There was I tell you, one of the best articles on this that I've read was in the Economist magazine. Gosh, it was sometime in the last couple of years, but they actually did the Economist Intelligence Unit did a very good study of offshore tax havens to try to quantify this. And of course, our officials in Department of Finance and in the ministry or CRA have good. But this is a very important issue. The integrity of our tax system. It's an important question of fairness, and we take it seriously.
Thank you, Minister. I'll have to stop it there. Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. I thank the Minister and your officials for being here. I think on behalf of all of our committee members, we do have a couple of very brief items to discuss. But Minister, if I could ask the committee to stay at their tables. And Minister, thank you very much. You are excused. Appreciate your appearance.
Thanks very much. And if you'll have me back, I'd like to come back. And I'd like to come back to talk about the main estimates, but also to talk about the reforming the budget and estimates process. And I referenced the fact that I have some time in having served in opposition. And so if you want to talk about some other things too, I'm open to that as well. I am absolutely, and I want to just make this very clear, and to all members of this committee, that as members of a committee, committees are the place in Parliament where effective work should be done across party line. And if committees can't function in an effective and constructive way, developing good public policy and holding government of any stripes to account, that's a real problem. And I have a personal commitment, having served sometimes in committees that didn't operate that way, and I think it's really important because the work, particularly I say this to new members of Parliament, the work you do on parliamentary committees is incredibly meaningful, incredibly important, and to your staffs and the team who support you, the work that they do in supporting your work, this is meaningful work where you can develop good public policy and really make a difference in the lives of Canadians. So I look forward to working with this committee as we move forward. And Mr. Chair, I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Minister. We appreciate your appearance.
Joyce Murray, I want to thank them here. We have, I just want to finish on this note. We have exceptional public servants. We have exceptional public servants in the Government of Canada. I referenced we've got some members of this committee who have worked in the public service and who would share that view. And we are well served, and I really want to thank them for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you all. I think if we could go, if I could quickly, since this is still being televised, if I could ask the committee to go in camera for about 2 minutes.
Sure. I just want to remind you that you missed one of our members. You skipped the schedule. It should have been a Liberal member for 5 minutes.
Yeah, can I just make a point of order to have it on the record that you skipped over my time and gave it to the NDP?
The schedule I have indicates I did not skip over that. The schedule that we adopted at the start shows in the first 7-minute round we go Liberal, Conservative, New Democratic Party, and Liberal.
Yes.
The second round, Conservative, Liberal, Conservative.
Yes.
And the third round, 3 minutes for the New Democratic Party.
No. That's what no. That's in fact not correct.
Where did you get the third round from, Mr. Chair? We have this. This is what we adopted.
This is what I have been given, and this is what my understanding is what we adopted.
No, we have been.
No, that's not what was adopted.
For the past.
We'll go back. We'll go back. We'll go back and check exactly the record as our clerk's going to examine.
Third round.
Yeah.
There's no third rounds, and it was Conservative, Liberal, Conservative, Liberal.
Nick, I know you weren't here yesterday, but we did exactly this rotation yesterday?
No, we didn't. We followed this rotation, but it was not Mr. Weir. It was first Mr.
No, I can assure you,
Rella.
I have the lineup from yesterday, and I can assure you we the exact rotation we did today. Now, if that's, I'm not going to get in an argument.
no
We'll
problem.
go back and check the rotation that was adopted. The committee obviously has an opportunity to adopt whatever speaking rotation it wishes. So let us first, if I may, check and see exactly what our records indicate, and we'll deal with that tomorrow.
Okay, sure.
But there's certainly no intent to skip over anyone. Certainly no intent.
And I don't want to take it away from Mr. Weir either. So.
Well, we'll go back and find out exactly what we adopted.
Okay.
Okay. The two issues, very briefly, that I had, one I mentioned yesterday for everyone to give consideration as to the meeting schedule the week of March 21st. The Tuesday meeting will not be held because it's budget day. My question to you for consideration was whether or not we have a full meeting on Thursday, the 24th. That is the day before we break for our 2-week Easter constituency weeks. So if we do not have a full meeting, and it'll be up to this committee to determine that, I suggested that we have a subcommittee meeting on agenda so we could get our work plan established. But I will leave it up to the consensus, hopefully, of this committee. Did you wish a committee meeting to be held on Thursday afternoon prior to Good Friday or not?
Do we have an agenda for the meeting? If we don't, then let's go with the subcommittee.
I would defer that to the subcommittee to see if there's a witness. Otherwise, we'll.
I'm fine with
And
subcommittee.
we have already some extra meeting this week, so it
Yeah.
balances.
For a full meeting on that Thursday, especially given that we're missing the meeting on Tuesday.
Well, I'll, if you may then, since we don't seem to have unanimity, let me check. I'll make a decision on that, but we'll find out first if there would be a full 2-hour agenda for the Thursday. If not, then I would suggest that we go to a subcommittee to develop the work plan from here on in. I'm not one to have a meeting for a meeting's sake. I'd like to have a meeting where we have a firm agenda in front of us.
Absolutely agree, although I guess I would note that, the subcommittee did recommend some items that were pushed back to make room for the estimates. So certainly it would be possible, to explore those topics on the Thursday.
Duly noted. The second point I had is just a point of information more than anything else. If we want to have our sub-Cs voted upon, we'll have to deal with that tomorrow because we have to report it back to the House by this Friday. So I'd like to keep about 10 minutes towards the end of tomorrow's meeting open for the votes. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
With that,
Yes.
we're adjourned.
Thank you.